Morning all. Thank you for no pressure speakers. Your first set of speakers are Josephine Hansom from Savanta and Kate Smith from WildBrain, and they will be talking about co-gaming and co-viewing, how families are spending their time together. Can we have a round of applause for our first set? Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. So welcome and thank you very much for coming this morning. So I'm Kate Smith and I'm EVP of Audience Engagement at WildBrain, and I'm here with Josephine from Savanta. And we're really pleased to share some of the findings from a research study that we did with Savanta. As a leader in kids and family entertainment, WildBrain's always looking to kind of stay on top of trends in family media consumption and behaviours. And hopefully this presentation will kind of take you through some of the things that we've learnt recently as relates to co-viewing and co-gaming. So, just before we jump in, for anybody who doesn't know WildBrain, or sort of a bit of an update really, I suppose, on WildBrain and where we are today, we're a leader in kids and family entertainment. We're home to brands like Teletubbies, Peanuts, Strawberry Shortcake, and hundreds of other kids shows. We have a very large catalogue. So everything around content creation, audience engagement, how we kind of connect with audiences through to global licensing. Just, you know, as a way of an example, we have a very large library, as I said. So my role is across all forms of that sales, content sales and distribution through to YouTube, Fast and AVOD, so all the different forms of ways in which you can take your content out to audiences. So I'm going to hand over to Josephine.
Brilliant, thank you. Hi, yeah, I'm Josephine Hansom. I work for Savanta, which is a market research agency, I guess one of the fastest growing ones out there. What we do is, I guess we offer clients research solutions by having research teams that are like specialists in your area, so say a media research team, but we also have different kind of boutique agencies that we buy. So we recently bought a youth research agency, and then you put the two together, youth and media, and then you get a great team. So that's how we ended up working with WildBrain. What else do I need to tell you? Oh, yes. Lots of people know Savanta because we have a large youth research panel. Even parents, I guess that's probably why you might know us and probably why we ended up working with WildBrain. Here is a video. So if you hadn't already guessed. So this is to give you a flavour of the work that we've done and what we're going to talk about today. So this is some vox pops of parents talking about sort of co-viewing, co-gaming and how it works for them in their household.
So I think co-viewing is just all about the shared experience and allows me to check the reaction, understanding of my child. Co-gaming just allows that competitive streak between the child and me. Usually the child beats the pants off me every game we play.
I prefer to watch educational content that helps her learn more about the world in ways that I cannot. The reasons I do it is, like I said, to help her learn and to show her that there's more to the world than what she sees in a day-to-day basis in her life.
I really enjoy playing video games with my son. We really get a lot of enjoyment. It brings us together, and also is a common interest that we have. I really am quite competitive. So is he, and as a result of that, we really do enjoy watching videos and actually representing those through video games.
So I think with Roblox, obviously he gets to build his own space, and it's very creative as well. As cringy as it sounds, it's the only thing I can do with him that makes me feel like down with the kids.
So the stuff we watch together, me and my 5-year-old, really great to have kind of like father-son bonding time. And we both have so much fun doing it together. And then we do a bit of Roblox as well.
Brilliant. So if we kind of start with what we were trying to understand, I suppose, from a WildBrain point of view, we were looking at sort of four key areas. So Firstly, co-viewing. We had seen this kind of trend accelerate, I suppose, off the back of the pandemic when kids and families were spending a lot more time at home together. And so we knew there was something there, but we wanted to understand how it had evolved and over the last few years. The second one was around gaming habits, and we've all seen lots of data about kids using these platforms, but we wanted to know how more broadly were families engaging with these places as well. We'd seen a sort of connection, but we wondered if there was some sort of relationship between the two that we didn't really understand. And then the last one was sort of within the content when families are watching together, what sort of stuff do they like, and their relationship with brands within this.
So what did we do? So yes, this is a lovely slide for the researcher and me. So we spoke to nearly 7,000 people across 2 markets, so the US and the UK. Even distribution of different age ranges and genders. And of course, because we were speaking to kids of different ages, sometimes the parents got involved and they were helping with answering the questions. The young teens were able to kind of do most of the things on their own, but maybe some of the parents were helping, and then obviously the older teenagers were answering all the questions themselves.
So just up the top, I suppose, there were 4 key trends that we saw. So co-viewing, as I mentioned, is still a core activity for family time together, and families are watching, when they're watching on primarily on the connected TVs, in a living room or a kind of shared environment. So this is the sort of moments of bonding, I suppose, time when people are actually enjoying content together. Co-gaming, I don't think we were expecting this so much, but it is a bit of a trend, and parents are playing alongside the kids, especially on Roblox. And then this time together and the desire to spend time together is about meaningful time. So, we've asked people why they were doing this. What was interesting is things came up around creating memories around the content they like to watch together. And then that kind of together time was actually driving engagement. And then finally, when you move into the gaming space, without ruining the results, kids and families quite like real-life brands, and so that's an opportunity for IP owners. And then what unites all these, I suppose, is that we gave it a funny name, but it's, this isn't just video or just gaming. There's a sort of engagement, and we're trying to think of it as a whole space, really, and what do you do with that? So then we'll go into the data behind each of these in detail.
So yeah, as Kate said, co-viewing isn't necessarily a new trend. I think you guys know about it. It's been around for a while. But I think what's important here is being able to put some numbers on these things. So what's interesting here is we see that 80%, so that's that 38% and 42% together of parents are co-viewing with their kids several times a week. So that is quite a significant number, not something to be ignored when you're putting together either advertising to families or if you're putting content to families. But it is something that, if we go on to the next slide, that is also distributed interestingly across the weekdays and the weekends. So looking at the data here, we see that as a minimum, families are co-viewing 2 hours a day in the week, and that rises to 3 hours a day at the weekend. So it's probably worth taking a pause here to kind of explain a little bit about the question that we asked and how people were answering this co-viewing question, because if you take all of the different things in the conference that people are saying, how many hours people are playing, listening, watching, engaging, there are not enough hours in the day. So the question that we asked was interpreted by obviously everybody who was taking part, and they were putting themselves as it is co-viewing. They were doing it together. It doesn't necessarily account for levels of attention or being physically together in the same kind of content experience.
So just to kind of add to that, that time, when are they spending time doing this? Per the questions that we asked people, it was showing up more in the evenings. I suppose it's no surprise that then the living room as a destination of choice for that co-viewing came up obviously strongly. Families wanted to spend time together watching in a shared space, and they're doing it primarily on CTV, connected TVs. We're well aware there's loads more kind of choices now once you open those TVs and to go and find content and different services. Just by way of a comparison to kind of back this up, obviously WildBrain, we manage a very large network of YouTube channels. So we see billions of views and tens of billions of minutes of watch time every month across the network of lots of different content. 60% of our watch time, that's the minutes watched, is watched on a television, and that's on YouTube. So you know, I think there's this legacy of thinking of YouTube as small screen, and it's just really not now. No surprise, really, because the app is available through all of these devices. So that's what's been the kind of driving force behind that. And for many of you, I'm sure you followed, Bloomberg recently reported YouTube is the most popular streaming platform on connected TVs in the US, outperforming Netflix. So just, you know, when you're thinking about content and the experience and where they find it, you know, YouTube is being watched on the TV, I suppose, like other services. Yeah, it's good to keep this in mind, I think, as content creators. And thinking about that, the fact that families are actually co-viewing some of this content as well. Right, so something we asked people that we surveyed around was, what sort of content are you watching together as well? Not surprising, I suppose, comedy. Regardless of age, it's a kind of very you know, general interest. Everyone likes to laugh together. And that time in the day, the relaxation time, I suppose, it kind of makes quite logical, really. For younger kids, things like superhero content, I mean, if you think of real life examples, sort of the Marvel world, etc., Animals, probably a nod to Bluey, and content with strong educational values skew a little bit older, skewed significantly higher for younger audiences, forgive me, than it did for teens and tweens, who are probably much more in control of their interests and stuff at that point as well. Families with older kids start to tune into more action and drama content, and certain genres had significant differences by gender. Younger girls, things like music, cooking, drama, more popular. Meanwhile, for young boys, some of the interests like action, sports and sci-fi came up stronger in this survey. It was something I touched on yesterday. I think if you think about co-viewing as well, if there's a joint decision there, the parents maybe are leaning towards things that they're interested in, or things they want their kids to be involved in, or would like them to take on those interests as well. So, you know, maybe that's something to think about too. I know my 5-year-old got to watch the football last night, thank you to my husband. Right, Josephine.
Brilliant, thank you. Let's talk about co-gaming a little bit. And again, get technical again. What did we ask here? So again, it was interpreted by the participants who are taking part. But this is where the parent is actively gaming with the child. So this isn't just observing their child gaming. But WildBrain didn't necessarily commission us to look into co-gaming. We asked about it in our survey to see what was going on, but it wasn't in those big objectives that Kate shared earlier. But it did prove to be super interesting. So I guess we know that gaming platforms are becoming more popular than ever. Roblox is a standout there. But kids aren't the only ones gaming, they're kids. And if you remember, it was 80% earlier. So that's not that far off, if you think about it, in terms of co-watching and co-gaming. And this, I guess the active role is the interesting part here. They're more active, the parents, when the kids are younger. But if you look at that younger age group, so half of mums of 6 to 8 year olds are co-gaming with their kids. That's more than the dads. And I guess that for us, that challenged the stereotype that we thought would be in this data, and just, yeah, a little surprise to share with you to take back today.
I'd add to that, I think as with much research, sometimes you get things back that are curious, and then you almost need to go and do more research to try and understand what's behind that. You know, I just had a conversation with some people earlier. Is that genuine gameplay? Is that just a sort of help supervision? I mean, at that age, they probably get stuck quite often, right? So a mum and dad having to kind of get involved to try and figure it out, because you need that. It's not just supervision checking they're okay. It's like, how do I help you navigate through this? And I don't know, there's something more in that. So we don't have the answers from this, by the way, but I think it was an interesting lead into something else that we could explore further. So on to this part, which was about sort of why they're doing this. What came back, I suppose, which was quite most interesting, I suppose, is beyond the supervision, I suppose, most of this was seen as quite good quality time. And to Josephine's point, I think you look at the amount of time spent, it's clearly not all massively active. There's going to be some of that which is more passive. But broadly speaking, they were seeing this entertainment time as a time together, and that was quite valuable time. It provides connection between families that they were looking for. So yeah, it was just an interesting one, I suppose, to leave, to have people think about in the audience. It's like, how do you think about this through the content and the stories that you're making, and where people will find things, and if it's a co-viewing audience.
And again, this is a slide to give you some numbers behind something you probably already know. So this is the Roblox slides. So as you can see, Roblox is more popular than Minecraft and Fortnite, according to our data. And it's not just about saying, oh, the more young people playing Roblox. It's about saying that young people are uniting and becoming a group because of Roblox. As it says on the screen, if you're looking for kids to come out to your movie, a studio is as good as dead if they don't target Roblox gamers. And so I guess that's the next few slides that we're going to talk about why this is an interesting new audience.
It's quite dramatic proclamation, isn't it? You must do it.
You must.
I suppose it's just interesting from a marketing point of view. It's a relevant place, and it's a kind of a key area to kind of reach the audience if you want to be successful.
So yes, we've got 3 reasons kind of why kind of Roblox is of interest here, but also the kind of relationship Roblox has with YouTube. And if you put those two together, it's bigger than the sum of its parts. So there's an opportunity here, I guess, for IP and brand engagement. Sort of using one platform seems to encourage use of another of the other platform. So YouTube, then Roblox, then YouTube, and that adds to the family mediaverse that Kate talked about earlier. At the top there, so you've got 73%, 7 out of 10 Roblox gamers say that they use Roblox to get YouTube to get ideas about Roblox, and Roblox to get ideas about YouTube. So 61% are watching Roblox. Weekly. Watch Roblox videos on YouTube weekly. So they are trying to get ideas there. And then over half are watching YouTube while playing Roblox, often using a smaller device and looking at YouTube, as Kate was saying, on the big connected TV.
And that is a whole other piece of research. How many people are doing screens at all the same time? Right. So what does this intersection between gaming and content then look like in practice? I suppose, put simply, some of the lines are blurring a bit, which is kind of interesting for audience engagement. Content IP owners are using gaming platforms to market their brands, and then gaming companies are venturing into content, to grow new audiences. When you look at examples in Roblox, many brands are now using kind of in-game sort of stunts and experiences to find these audiences. And we've done some interesting stuff for some of the film companies with the Garfield movie, and Ghostbusters came along and interact with them. And they have sort of mind-boggling numbers in terms of the engagements that the players have with these things in the worlds. You're all good, don't I? On the other side, gaming companies are looking to premium content and platforms. Sega's had a tremendous run with the success of Sonic the Hedgehog, including feature films and series such as Sonic Prime, which WildBrain produced in partnership with Netflix and Sega. And also we recently announced that WildBrain Studios will be making a Minecraft series for Netflix as well. So
just the final point for me before you round up. So yeah, it's just worth bearing in mind that realness and seeing brands that you see in the real world, in virtual worlds, in the metaverse, in the games that young people are playing, is something that kids really like. It's not something for them yet, or at all is grating. So 7 out of 10, so this is the US and the UK data here, are saying that seeing real life brands in the games that they play is something that they really like, because it's familiar and it just helps them understand the wider world that they're living in. So this is just a useful number again to have up your sleeve to take back to the office.
Cool. So just to wrap up, what were the main things that this research taught us? The top line takeaway is that entertainment really is kind of at the heart of this family time, and families are taking advantage of the ever-expanding opportunities to enjoy content and gaming together. Instead of just being siloed to thinking about TV or gaming, YouTube as sort of separate activities, audiences are then also moving between some of these entertainment platforms. Co-gaming seems kind of here to stay, This is also a generation of parents that probably grew up with gaming and are very familiar with it. So it's not, maybe they are teaching their kids how to game. I don't know. I'm the opposite. I'm a bit out of that. So yeah, and it's fun time, and it could be quite creative, and it could be. There's a level of engagement here which I think IP owners and storytellers can play with more. For IP owners and content producers, there's a growing relationship, as we said, between content and gaming, and I think there's more touch points here. So how do you think about this as a wider world to take advantage of? And finally, I suppose, in a nice way, and this kind of echoes lots of things that have come up over the last couple of days. This is screen time that can be good time. It's creating kind of memories and shared experiences and interests that people talk about once they've put that phone and that telly off. So they're looking to kind of find these experiences and enjoy them together. And I think that's the end.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. So just in regards to questions, we'll save questions to the end for both sets of speakers. Now you're going to have the pleasure of listening to Sadie Buckingham from Giraffe Insights and Stephen Murphy from Sky Media, who will be talking about innovation, not imitation, the power of uniquely human content. So a round of applause again, please. Thank you.
Yes, so the session's going to be on innovation, not imitation, and this is going to be showcasing the ways that we can tap into those elements which are uniquely human to increase that quality of content, tap into platforms and communications that actually we've not been able to do in this way before. I'm Sadie, I'm Director at Giraffe Insights. We are a kids, youth and family research specialist.
Hi everyone, my name's Steve Murphy. I'm the Head of Insight and Measurement at Sky Media, and Sky Media is the advertising sales arm of Sky. And I mentioned it yesterday, but that picture is pre-COVID and I've put some weight on since then, so...
And we're going to be talking about three main pillars of insights today. The first is around the changing face of TV. This is going to be looking at a recap of how kids are viewing and actually the ways in which we should be looking at that and talking about that moving forwards. Secondly, elements around what is it that makes us uniquely human, specifically the elements that we can tap into to help that element in terms of creating higher quality content for parents. Moving into that era of mass niche, we've looked at lots around this digital age and how can we leverage those, again tapping into some of those uniquely human elements coming through. And we're going to be utilising a range of sources as well. So we actually did a bespoke survey in collaboration with Sky, specifically for this session. We've got insights coming through from Kids in the Screen, which is our media study that we've been running for many years in the UK and the US across thousands of children. We've got Little Voices, which is our new proprietary language tool, which I'll come on to in terms of talking you through what that looks like. And Teen Talk, just to provide some extra kind of colour in terms of some of the data points that we've had as well.
And just to give you a bit of an overview of Sky Media, so we sell advertising on our own channels, obviously, but we're also, particularly in the kids market, we are representing some of, well, actually most of the broadcast channels now. So the Pop channels, Cartoon Network, Boomerang, all of the Nickelodeon channels, and Milkshake.
So the first section is just going to be around the changing face of TV. And what we've seen, and we're all aware that it is changing, the world is evolving in terms of the amount of technology which is emerging and the ways in which children can get access to different forms of content. And what this means is kids have never had more access at their fingertips in terms of the types of content that they want to watch. They don't have to wait anymore, they can go out and seek whatever it is that they want in that moment in time. And what that means is, importantly, that they're creating their own experiences. It's something that's very specific to them, very niche to them, and they can go out and find that specific piece of content for them. And what that means is it's moment specific. This is a theme that actually comes up throughout the rest of the session in terms of need states. We've done lots of semiotics around this, and we're able to map particular need states and specific content which taps into that in terms of dialing up, dialing down, being able to look at what that daily life might look like represented on the screen and to help them move forward forward in terms of some of that emotional development as well. And it's aggregated. We've got the platforms like Sky Glass that actually predicts what it is. It's looked at what you've watched, it predicts what you might want to watch, and it creates a space for you to, you don't even have to go out and search for it anymore. It's all aggregated in one space. We've created, or we've included a slide from research that we actually run with Precise TV. This is in the US, always one step ahead in terms of some of those content viewing behaviours that we have. And what we've seen is it's those digital spaces linked to those interests in the past year. And in the UK, if we ask children what it is that they're watching or what they're enjoying at the moment, absolutely, it's short form content. There's a lot of talk about it within the industry, and it's absolutely something that they are watching and enjoying. But if we ask them what it is that they want to watch in the future, it comes back to that longer form content, so those full TV shows and those films as well. So there is a space still for both of those types of formats to be appealing, and we need to be keeping on top of the kind of the difference between the conversations that are happening and the truth that sits behind it, and just make sure we're still delivering on what it is that they need.
And obviously, given the channels we're selling for full episodes in terms of our linear channels is really what we're about. And what we've got here is the reach amongst 4 to 9 year olds for Jan to May this year, amongst some selected characters. So you see we're getting really strong reach for across a wide range of characters. But what's also really interesting is that we just above that, we're first on the scene, so to speak. And you can see these are really well established. So I think the youngest one there, if you like, is Paw Patrol, which is that's sort of 11 years old, and by far and away the oldest. So not the Adventures of Paddington, but the character of Paddington at least is from 1958. So he's coming up for his 65th birthday. But so it really says something about the longevity of really strong characters. But what we are seeing, so we've looked at 2 characters here, is that what's been traditionally that sort of live linear consumption of content, we are seeing that declining, but we're seeing it. It's not disappearing; it's shifting. So we're seeing that shift towards VOD platforms. But what we wanted to come on to now was just again looking at some more BARB data, but just trying to understand, and obviously quite closely linked with the presentation that we just saw, is the putting this in the context of co-viewing, and co-viewing is actually something that we think is really valuable. It's something that broadcast TV does very well at. So just to try and put some colour on that. So we see about 63% of kids are watching TV with someone else. But just to say, this is our dedicated kids channels. And this is all kids 4 to 15. So we can see here that 63% is with someone else, but there's some nuances within that. So 19% is watched with other kids, 27% is watched with an adult with no other kids, and then a further 17% is watched with adults and kids. So some obviously family where where there's more than one child in the family. But again, we do see some big differences in that. Sort of, I suppose, beware of averages. So we split it out by the dedicated channels that we represent. And you can see there's actually quite a big difference. So something like Cartoon Ito is much less likely to be watched alone. Most of that is actually co-viewing. Whereas something like an older channel like Nickelodeon at the top there is actually about half of that is soulless viewing, if you like, so a child watching on their own. So in terms of sort of averages, just bear in mind that within different channels and we do see some variation. We also asked why you watch this type of content together, and we asked this in the context of linear TV and digital. We've got the top 2 answers here. So the top one was the same for both, and I suppose it's sort of unsurprising, really. It's just to spend good quality time. So 62% for linear TV and 53% for digital. And then also with linear TV, it was 46%, was just content that they enjoy watching together. In terms of the second answer for digital, that's where we saw maybe a bit of kind of safety concerns coming through, because it's not all about just watching together and having an enjoyable co-viewing experience. There's an element there of just making sure that the content being viewed is appropriate. So in terms of the survey that we that we ran with Sadie and Giraffe, we found that 5 in 10 parents are choosing TV content decisions are made together between parents and children, and 8 in 10 parents agree that they involve their children in the decision-making process when they're watching content. So, in terms of why this is important, well, certainly a Sky Media point of view, is that we want to demonstrate the value of that. Co-viewing is great, but we need to demonstrate why that's valuable. The so what, if you like. So we asked about purchasing of toys and games. After viewing toy and games adverts together on linear TV, 46% claim that it does give them gift ideas for their child, and another 46% claim that it gives them the child gift ideas that they then share with their parents. And overall, actually, we found that there was 8 in 10 of those who had viewed together. 8 in 10 parents do go on to purchase toys and games that they've talked about with their child following that shared viewing experience.
And what that means is it's changing the way that we might consider the way that we talk about TV. It's not about TV now, it's about creating content in terms of that specific moment in time and those need states that sit behind. We know with Kids in the Screen, we've actually added, and there's lots of different ways that we can use these need states as well. So with Kids in the Screen, we've actually done it on a commercial level, identified 3 magic moments, which makes up 8 out of 10 adverts that they recall. And that is about being able to understand the morning, so that's broadcast, it's time stamped, it's safe, it's having their breakfast, and then in the afternoon it's the hobby hole, they're looking at their interests and hobbies. It's a time to resonate as a brand that is for them, connecting on interests and specific hobbies that they're watching. And in the evening, as we've just seen with the session before, in the evening it's about that co-viewing space, it's about connecting that leisure activity, probably more adult type content, and they're more likely to be asking for things in that moment and receiving it. There's quite some strong stats in terms of the power of purchase within each of these different moments and the role that the content can play within each. But it's the way in which we are talking about TV and utilising which can be improved and utilised moving forwards. So the next section is going to be around uniquely human. So we know that the way in which the world is changing is changing very rapidly. And it's already impacting the types of research that we're doing. So we are utilising AI platforms to be able to actually transform the language that we use. So we take adult language, we've got now an AI platform that turns it into something that's very specific for children. It changes the methodology, it changes the way we'd actually approach a situation. But importantly, it's actually framed within something that's been human-driven. So we've got natural language, which is informing it from thousands of children through our proprietary research pieces. We're utilising theory in terms of the development and the children and in terms of those different age groups and even the way in which they're interacting with toys. Insights from our other proprietary research pieces as well. And what that's meaning is we've got the collision of both worlds, so artificial intelligence and the human interactions that we've got and the human learnings. And what it means is the consistency that we're getting back from this feedback, we're going down to age groups that we've not been able to do, to be able to ask them direct questions. And we're getting really good feedback, really consistent feedback in terms of MPD and elements where we want to be able to actually bring children back into the heart of that decision making in methodologies that before we would have actually had a bit more influence from the parents. And it's only the beginning. We know that there is AI to detect AI. And something that I'm really excited about is this diversification and personalisation. So being able to move beyond demographics to something like language. We know that a 6-year-old is not the same as another 6-year-old. So be able to be using language to tailor, personalise and approach things in a way that's actually very specific to them. I think we could do a bit more in this space. Because importantly, AI can only join the dots. It's still up to us to be able to have that unique idea at the core. And ultimately, it's about innovation, not imitation. AI can take from that pool of data, but it's up to us to make sure that that pool of data is of high quality data points, that it's not it's unbiased, and that it's underpinned by those elements which are making us uniquely human. And these are just a few different examples of the way that we are. We have that empathy in terms of the ways in which we can recognise those different feelings and that our past experiences. Storytelling and culture linked together quite nicely in terms of the way in which we might approach a situation based off our past experiences, based off identities, based off communities, the things that we would talk about if we would talk about something. All of this is really important in terms of how we're framing any of those ideas and any of those innovations. And then creativity is really important. So it's up to us to start that spark in terms of those ideas that we bring to the table. And we actually ask parents, of all the elements and all the content that you've been watching, what is it about that piece of content that makes it high quality? And of the two elements, that the two main themes that came through, and these are open ends, so they can say anything at this point. So it comes from the heart in terms of what they're saying. The two main themes are around curiosity, creativity, imagination, to be able to encourage children to think outside of the box, to be able to look towards those different creative ideas and exploring their own ideas as well. And empathy, a big theme that's come across over the past couple of days, but we're in a different age now. There's generational differences in the ways in which we would talk, or even if we would talk about things like mental health and personal development. It's something that parents really value in the pieces that they are watching and consider it to then be engaging with high quality content. We also ask them who's getting it right. BBC comes out on top, Bluey comes out on top, but an overriding theme as well is those elements linked to those uniquely human aspects that we've just talked about. So horrible history, so that cultural element, watching people doing really well in terms of Britain's Got Talent, and the documentaries and that real life element. And even David came out as quite a few open ends in terms of just the way that he talks about what it is he's seeing and that empathy that he's able to bring to the story. And Bluey, I won't talk too much about Bluey, but we've seen the rise of Bluey. It absolutely taps into that empathy element. And wherever we're seeing Bluey, we're seeing an increase of viewership. But interesting, we've done a lot of semiotics around this as well. The attributes that you can relay over the top of Bluey, any other shows which are represented in that same way and signifying that same way, they are increasing as well. So there is absolutely an appetite for this type of content.
And this comes from a survey that, well, it's not run with us. It's the Kids on the Screen survey that Giraffe run that we're lucky enough to tap into. So here we've got the top shows from the last, from sort of pre-pandemic up to last year, and you can see that over that time it really is those in terms of where people are getting the most popular content from. It's really is quite unchanging in terms of the top three at least.
So the last section, it's a little bit shorter anyway, is that the era of mass niche. So what does this mean for brands? And actually, we're able to connect in a way that we haven't connected before. We know that commercial time has declined. We know that it's stabilised over the past few years. But absolutely, we need to make the most of the time that we have available. We need to be showing up in their spaces. They've got a very diverse way in which they're accessing content now, and we need to be showing that we actually know who they are, we know where they are, and we are agreeing with the type of content that they're watching as well, and showing up there and talking their language, even with little voices we've showcased. It's really important to actually be able to tap into the way in which they're speaking so that we can resonate on their level. But for the purposes of today, in the time, we're just going to be focusing on how to connect on that personal level and how to connect on a brand level.
So one of the things that we wanted to understand was just in terms of broadcast and the value it brings in terms of the sort of like USPs it has, is that we did find that 49% of parents prioritise content exclusive to TV channels for its distinctiveness and also the fact it does have that element of curation. And we also found that 77% of parents prioritise content that's relevant to their child's interests and preferences. So again, what does this mean then? So, I think this is important. 3/4 of parents, are more likely to recommend brands that do offer high quality content for their children.
But there is more to be done. If we ask parents what it is that they would like to see more of, it taps into those human elements that we've seen before. So being able to showcase mental health, emotional well-being is the top, financial literacy and personal development as well. So key themes that actually they want to be seeing more of in the content that they're viewing. We also ask them, of the things that we know that are doing very well within that digital space, which we know is also performing well and increasing, what is it that Linear can tap into to leverage some of those? And the top 3 were about that interactive, immersive storytelling, which we saw in the session before our session, which ties in really nicely. And actually just to showcase again that you know what it is that they like. You are being able to connect on that personal level, and authenticity, being able to show up in that way that is true to you. And ultimately what that means, if you're able to connect on that level, if you're able to show up in their spaces, it means that you understand that end audiences, you are where they are. And if you're able to place yourself in that content that represents the values that they share, and there's been a lot of talk about communities, there's lots of opportunity for us to be able to do that more. And ultimately they will buy, and they're more likely to buy if they feel that they're connected to you. So the last slide is, well, what does that mean? For brands, it's about being able to access those different spaces, understand who those audiences are, understand where they are, and what types of content is best for us to be able to place that communication and to start that connection on a personal level. And for content, it's about the future. It's about creating that high quality, human-centric content which parents want, and ultimately tap into those more diverse spaces and creating a future space for brands to be able to utilise in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're just going to have questions now. So if four speakers want to come up and just stand centrally, and we'll take questions. So I've got the first question over here. Just wait for the mic. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Both presentations are really interesting. Can I just go back to that slide just before the intermission with the top 3 year by year? Because it seemed very counterintuitive. Blue Peter was number 3 for the last 2 years, because it only gets 30,000 ratings, doesn't it? So.
It's done on a diary, so we know that there is consistency with what comes through with that. So there's sometimes there are oddities that come through with kids on the screen. One was YouTube being watched, this is a few years ago, YouTube being watched on the screen, and we initially were like, that must be weird, they must be getting it wrong in terms of the way that they are recording it, but then here we are later on, YouTube is being watched predominantly on screen. So because it's a diary, we believe and we have full trust, and sometimes it's over 100,000 data points going in and 1 or 2% differences. So there is truth in terms of the age groups that are watching it through the diary at that particular week in that moment in time.
What's the diary, sorry?
It's Kids in the Screen, so we do 2. There's one in the UK, which is a diary twice a year, that we've been running since 2017. And then there's a US one, which we run with collaboration with Precise TV, which is in the US. We run that with kids, and we also run it with teens as well. But it's about being able to understand where kids are, the media that they're utilising, and with the US, it's also a survey, so we ask about brands as well. But it's just to help toys and games and everybody who invest in it to be able to understand why kids are viewing different pieces of content.
So can I just ask, does that mean that it's when the kids would say, this is what I did in my day and this
Yes.
is what I remember doing?
Yeah, in the diary, and that, so it's an app that they have on their phone for the UK, so it's in that moment in time, so it's represented of that day, and YouTube we treat a little bit differently over the course of time, but then it's just reflective of it's like a timestamp, and we do it during the day, we do it at the weekend, we do it half term.
I mean, maybe that's interesting, the thing that they remember watching versus the rating that they actually watched. I don't
know whether we were just saying, I wonder whether it's parents as well. Parents recognise the brand Blue Peter. I mean, I've worked with Blue Peter for years and years, so I love Blue Peter, but I very much doubt that statistic. And also it seems surprising that that Bluey wasn't in there. I wonder why that was.
Yeah, and it will be, so it's 2 to 9s this as well, so probably if we were to split that, but for the purpose of today it's a total level, but if we were to put in the younger age groups, Bluey comes out on top, and there's basically 2 or 3 shows that come out all the time, so it would change depending on what it is that they're viewing. So for example, Stranger Things pops up for 9-year-olds. And we've done that several times, and it's still coming through. It's not an oddity, it's a truth. And they're probably it's just to have that timestamp. We just need to investigate when it comes up in terms of is it an oddity, or is it something that's actually a theme that's going to be emerging.
So when you were talking about like how parents wanted like more high quality content for children and viewing, there was recently like a trend on social media where parents were showing as like a life hack which was to put on shows that they watched when they were growing up with kids. So I'm wondering, have parents ever talked about wanting to get more shows like what they had when they were growing up, for like there's a quality kind of content for today's kids? Because I know some shows kind of dumb it down for kids compared to like some shows back then, which I think understood kids a bit more and had like I think a bit more authenticity to it compared to nowadays. So has that ever like popped up?
Yeah, I suppose in terms of obviously I work quite closely with Barb Data, and as great as Barb Data is, you don't really get an understanding of the context behind what those decisions are in terms of the content. I mean, we definitely see some, a bit like the Stranger Things thing, I suppose, is that you definitely do see some oddities in the data, and we do know that. Well, I say we do know. I've never done any research on it, but that kind of nostalgia thing with parents is definitely a thing. But we haven't specifically looked at that, if I'm being honest. Yeah.
So if I compare the linear data stuff with what we see across YouTube, at WildBrain we have a very large library, a catalogue of older, well-known shows. We still see huge veering on some of the much older stuff, that just has that legacy. And it's also, there's a little bit about how much is available. So, on YouTube, if there's lots of that digital first stuff and there's a big volume of it, that will then command a bigger audience, right? So it gets a bit more airtime versus the older stuff, the newer stuff would probably have their long new series on a broadcast platform, and then the YouTube strategy will be a bit more smaller clips and sort of complementary stuff, so it's never going to get as much interest. As I said, there's library content on YouTube today that kids content that does incredibly well still, because there's not the space to put it on these other platforms. So it's become a library experience on YouTube for other stuff. And then you do get like grandparents, parents who might look up things that they love to show to their kids and their grandparents, because it's a sort of place to go search for things. Does that answer the question? Yeah. Okay.
Hiya. I just wondered, when you do the research that you've done, what's the sort of split country-wise? And
that's a good question, because we discussed earlier that I was going to say that and then I didn't. Yes, so it was UK US, but I guess in the data that we had, every question that we asked, the US indexed higher. So it's probably useful to, the majority of the data that I was sharing was both US and UK together. If you want to get in touch with Kate or myself, we are able to kind of help you unpick those two markets if that's of interest. But yeah, it was the data was both markets together, but whatever question we asked in terms of co-viewing, co-gaming, the US was a little bit more than the UK.
In terms of co-viewing, to what extent did you research or find out about pester power? So who's deciding who to watch, or is it down to age? The younger they are, it's going to be the parents. The older they are, it's going to be the kids who actually decides what's being watched in co-viewing.
I don't think we focused on that this time. We had done it before about the kind of the shared decision making, or if it's more the kids or the adults. Forgive me, I can't remember. I don't think we did in this. But yeah, it's another interesting. Marlin's saying no, we didn't. No, we didn't in this particular survey. So yeah, but it is a really interesting question. Like, who's motivating that decision? I suspect you're absolutely right. The younger the audience, much more direction, curation, and then the older, there's probably a bit of more shared conversation influence with the older. But still, the parents are going to have to want to watch it. So hours of gameplay videos, maybe not so much.
It's all really interesting. I was just thinking about, like, having done this for a long time, that when you make, this is the 5 to 6 section, and I saw that there was talks for the other age groups, that when you make content, we always used to talk about the sweet spot. like your demo is between, you know, a sort of 4-year age gap, and then you want to hit the sweet spot of a 5-year-old, let's say. Do you think that's changing at all with all of this research and how the kids are going into Roblox and all the different stuff and how more sophisticated ways that they're watching content? Do you think the sweet spot is valid anymore for program makers?
So I think there is still a sweet spot. I think you still need to be keeping in touch with what that is, but we know that the ages dial up and dial down, going back to those need states. So sometimes kids just want to switch off. So we're getting older kids tapping into things like Peppa Pig, and you look at them and you don't realise that you don't believe the results, but there's a large proportion of kids just going into those slightly younger age groups. If they've got older siblings in the house, they might be going slightly older. So I think it would get very complicated. So I think the sweet spot still exists. I think it's still something to shoot for, because that's the characteristic and the language that comes with that show.
But also just to say that without the sweet spot, what do you have left? So it's there for a reason, and it's helping you target and create content for your audience. But the trend that we're seeing, especially from your presentation just now, is that things are diversifying, and those hobbies and interests are things that you should be paying attention to, which can skew older and younger. But I don't know if you've got anything to add.
I suppose just quickly to add, I think the Asian stage doesn't change, right? The way that kids kind of grow up and when they understand things, but the discovery has changed a bit. So there's the curated experience, linear experience, and then there's other places where they will search and discover things much more by interest and what the things that they like. And so I think there's just different ways that they're finding content. But I suppose, the sweet spot's still there. It's what's going to resonate with a kid at that moment in time and what they're attracted to.
Hi, Guy from Dog Ears. Within the co-gaming, were there any indie games that made an appearance as parents and kids talking about? So I know you said Roblox and the bigger kind of Fortnite. Was there any indie games that popped up multiple times as like popular?
We did ask about particular games, but I tell you what, it's a long, long tail, right? And it got quite wacky quite quickly. And so, sure, there are definitely big named brands on those platforms that more people are aware of. But I'm just picturing the slide where we had, I haven't heard of half of them, but some of them, yes, yeah. I think there are clear favourites, but it's also a huge platform with the ability to create your own, right? So I think there's a massive breadth of stuff. As with YouTube, there are millions of people with 10 million subscribers, so it's quite a long one. I wouldn't say to call out any specifics, I'm afraid.
Hi, Colin Ward, Children's Media Foundation. Just wanted to maybe dive a bit deeper into the figures around the co-viewing, because I've been to the research sessions this morning as well, and you look at the time that is allocated to children around their media habits, and 2.5 hours a day of co-viewing on top of the time they spend on TikTok, on YouTube, although obviously some of the co-viewing was YouTube, obviously. But so I'm just wondering, did your research also dig in a bit to how much attention they were giving to that co-viewing, and whether they were in the room and the television set was on and mum and dad or whoever was there was watching something and they were on their phone or tablet doing something completely different? So to the extent that the co-viewing had depth.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why we're showing it, I guess, today. But we did give an explanation of what we were asking about. We didn't necessarily quantify the amount of attention, but we were explaining co-viewing is this, co-gaming is this. Could you please tell us how much you think you're doing? So, as with anything, you have to take it as read, and there'll be outliers on either side, but it's happening in families up and down the country. And I guess people will attribute a parent or an adult being quite close as being co-viewing, but you can't really claim a co-game if somebody isn't actually there with you. So that would be probably, if anything, is the more accurate figure. I would probably say the co-gaming.
Just to say as well, in terms of the Barb data, actually, so the Barb definition is presence in the room. So if you're in the room, you count effectively. So, but in terms of ours, it was. Oh, sorry. In terms of ours, it was based on kids' channels. So I suppose the assumption there is that maybe it was the adults on the phones and the kids watching. But yeah, as far as Barb's concerned, it is measuring presence in the room.
We have no more questions. Thank you. We have one more round of applause for our speakers.